have made for us a wonderful world. In today's gospel, Jesus describes how the church from the beginning sent workers out into the community to bring love, God's love to people, to bring a vision of a kingdom, a different social and political vision than Rome had to offer, a different social and political vision than what Jerusalem had to offer, different from what Phoenix has to offer, or Washington, D.C. It's an amazing vision. A vision where those people who don't count in the world's eyes are the most important people in the world to God. Jesus describes to all the disciples, the church, and to those laborers in the harvest how their love and their work could so influence the lives of the people in the community whom they helped, that those to whom they were sent would get so transformed and empowered by God through their word that they themselves would be incorporated into Jesus' fellowship, and they themselves would become the movers and the shakers that would transform the world. The down and out would become the transforming movers and shakers of the world. To welcome still others. What Jesus described is not an exclusive religious institution that serves its members. There were plenty of religions like that already. But an inclusive movement that would transform people's lives and transform the whole society. Jesus says that those who go into the community and those who send them and those who are in the community being welcomed are all of us, so intimately connected to God and to one another that those we welcome are welcomed by God. Those that we welcome are welcomed by God. And that when we welcome them, even with a cup of cold water, we are welcoming God. Jesus says later, if you do it for the least,
for these, you've done to me.
Yeah. Jesus had been touring the neighborhoods and zip codes around Galilee, doing a little of this and a little of that, like most preachers do. And he was dealing with some very large social issues that impacted the lives of the people that the Roman and Jewish government and religion completely discounted or overlooked. And he helped individual people who had personal difficulties, pointing out the flaws in the whole system. Some demons had been driving a man who had been kept outside the camp, outside the walls of the town of Jerusalem, and his whole life. And so people figured if they could just keep him out there, that they wouldn't have to look at it. If they didn't have to look at it, they wouldn't have to deal with it. The mentally ill, you know? And Jesus told those demons and this man that they'd be better off in a herd of pigs. And the pigs were so upset by these spirits invading them, that they dove into the water to get rid of them, the way we think we can get rid of a swarm of bees, you know, by diving into the pool. Think again, you know. But these pigs forgot that pigs don't swim. And so they drowned. And the townspeople had been glad to see Jesus come, and they were glad to see that Jesus made the demon-possessed man feel better, but they resented the economic implications. They resented the economic loss of the pigs, which they couldn't write off. It's the same old story. People say they want God's kingdom to break in on earth. But they don't want the treatment of the mentally ill or the health care of the needy to cost them anything. So when they found out that Jesus' vision of God's reign on earth doesn't come out without some personal investment, they decided that they preferred Caesar and Herod after all. And they asked Jesus to leave town. So Matthew's chapter 10 then tells us that Jesus left town. And he went about the usual work of a minister. A little preaching here, a bit of visiting and healing the sick here, raising a little dead girl around the corner, helping a mute person to find a voice. And Jesus found, like the rest of us, that no single part of ministry or of organizing or of evangelizing is all that hard or complicated. But when you add them all together, all these pieces, the work is pretty much endless. And even those things that you do get done don't stay done. There are always more people being oppressed or treated as less than. I mean, you no sooner get through with one family or one group and there's somebody else. There are always more sick people than there is money or medicine. There are always more kids on the street. There are always more immigrants from more places looking for more better lives for themselves and their kids. There always will be. There always were. Jesus' day was no different from ours. There was an endless stream of the poor in his day. In his day, he said it was the widows, the orphans, and the immigrants. Those are the ones that he kept hammering about. Roman religion said that everyone was in his or her place in society because it was the will of the gods. Wherever you were born, that's where you were supposed to stay. That's it. You had no choices. The scribes and the Pharisees, in the Jewish side of things, were pretty well off. And they were telling people that if they were poor and sick, then they must have done something to tick God off. So you are either down and out because the gods have determined that you're a place in life, or you're sick and poor because you've done something to make the Almighty angry. Well, isn't that a happy place to be? You know? As church lady would say, isn't that special? You know? With the volume of people in need, Jesus knew that he needed help. So he got his disciples together and they prayed to God. Oh God, the harvest is so plentiful. There's so many people out there, and the laborers are so few. Remember that while God's Spirit is working through Jesus, Jesus is at this point a regular human being like us, who gets angry, hungry, lonely, tired like the rest of us. Jesus is the Son of God who says that we're all God's sons and daughters who can be addressing God immediately as our Father. Jesus welcomes us into that familial relationship. In other places he says, Mama. But Jesus, like any human being, is looking at the enormity of the task of preparing for God's reign on earth with its attendant health care, economic justice, peacemaking, community organizing, teaching, feeding the hungry masses, warning Herod and Caesar to be lifting citizens' burdens rather than piling them on. I mean, the work is endless. Remember that what got Jesus into trouble was that he kept proclaiming this new politics. The kingdom of God. Kingdom of God in the midst of two other kingdoms. The reign of God in this world, he said, is beginning right here, right now. Everybody in that day had been told that God's reign would come at the end of time, after Judgment Day, when all the dead had been raised. It's like those churches that say salvation is about what happens to you or your destination when you croak. Yep. Jesus says that God's care for you when you die is the dessert, not the main course. Instead, Jesus, like all the prophets and John the Baptist, Jesus came preaching God's realm here and now. God's love for all people and care for all people here and now in this world. He even teaches us to pray, thy kingdom come on earth, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven already. He's exhausted. He's exhausted. So he models for us what we're supposed to do. He assesses the situation around him, and unlike the Rome or the scribes, Jesus doesn't say, these people are just stuck, they have to take it. And he doesn't say, they're bad. He says,